Anthropologie is a treasure trove of weird, quirky crocheted items, so today I thought we would dive into that deep well and make our own version of this granny square cardigan. It is really beginner friendly. If you know how to do a chain stitch, a double crochet, and a slip stitch, you can make this cardigan. That's really all you need to be able to do it. But before we dive into the tutorial, I made a vlog about this entire process, so if you are interested in learning more about how I came up with this pattern, go check out that video when you're done here. I'll leave a link down in the description. All right, let's get to it. The first thing we need to do is go over our materials. This cardigan is worked almost entirely in granny squares, and the original cardigan had a lot of different color combinations, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to stick to 3 main color combinations. Each granny square will have a primary accent color, a secondary accent color, and the main body color, which is going to be present throughout the entire sweater. Today, I'm going to be using this 100% cotton yarn that I got at Hobby Lobby. The amount you need is going to vary based on the size of your cardigan. Today I'm making a medium. For me, I used 1 skein each for all of the accent colors and 6 skeins for the main body color. I'll leave a list of the exact colors that I used in the description as well as in the written pattern. All of the information about sizing and everything like that can be found in the written pattern as well, so make sure that you follow along with that. To go along with my yarn, I'm going to be using this 5.5mm crochet hook. This is the size hook that my yarn recommends. If you can't find the exact brand of yarn that I used, any yarn that uses the same size crochet hook should be fine for this project. And lastly, you're going to need a tapestry needle to help you hide all of your yarn tails. And that is everything you'll need, so let's get to crocheting some granny squares. For those of you who have never made a granny square before, a basic granny square is just worked in groups of 3 double crochets with chains in between each group. The area where we have 2 chains is going to form the corners of our squares. Starting with our primary accent color, we are going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Next, we're going to slip stitch into the 4th chain from the hook to form a ring. Next, we're going to chain 2. This is going to count as the first double crochet for our round. Then we're going to do 2 double crochets in the center of the ring. So we yarn over and double crochet 1, yarn over, and double crochet 2. Then we're going to chain 2. So now that we have our first group of double crochets, we're going to go back into the center of the ring and do 3 more double crochets. So this is 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 2 and do 3 more double crochets in the center of the ring. 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 2 and do 1 more group of 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to chain 2 to form that last corner. To finish off the row, we are going to slip stitch under those first 2 chains we made in this round. Just slide your hook under those 2 chains and slip stitch to join the rounds together. And because we're changing colors at the end of this round, we're actually just going to chain 1 and then cut our yarn and pull it through to finish off the round. Make sure you leave a long enough tail that you can thread it through your needle to weave in later. And now we're ready to start our second round. So we need to grab our secondary accent color. And the first thing we need to do is slip stitch into one of the chain spaces. You don't have to slip stitch into the chain space where you finished off from the last round. It can be any of the corner spaces you choose. So once you find a spot, go ahead and put your hook through the chain space. Put your slip knot on your hook. pull it through, and then chain 2. Then we're going to do just like we did before and do 2 double crochets in that same chain space. So don't move on into the stitches. Do all your double crochets in the chain space. 1, and 2. Next, we're going to chain 2 to form the corner. And then we're going to go back into that same chain space as before and do 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. So we have our first corner formed. Next, we're going to chain 1 to help us bridge the gap between this corner and the next corner. And now for the rest of the round, it's going to follow the same pattern. You're going to double crochet 3 in the next chain space, chain 2, double crochet 3 in that same chain space, and then chain 1. You're going to repeat that 3 times. So let's do this together and make 1 double crochet, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and then do another 3 double crochets in that same chain space. 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to chain 1, and then go into the next chain space and repeat what we just did. So do 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then do another 3 double crochets in the same chain space. And then chain 1. Let's do that again in this last corner. So do 3 double crochets, chain 2, then do another 3 double crochets in the same chain space. And then chain 1. And now, just like we did with the previous round, you can slip stitch under the first 2 chains we made. So insert your hook under the chains, slip stitch, and then chain 1 to finish off. And just like we did with the previous round, we're going to cut our yarn now. Leave a long enough tail that you can weave it in later. And we are going to change to the next color. So now we're going to do 1 more row in our primary accent color. So just like we did before, pick any corner to start in, and then chain 2 to start your row. Then do another 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. Then just like we did before, we're going to chain 2 and do another 3 double crochets in that same chain space. Next, we're going to chain 1 and then do 3 double crochets in this middle chain space. So this is going to form the side of our square. Anytime you have a side to your square, you're going to do 3 double crochets and chain 1 instead of chaining 2. So we're going to do 3 double crochets, and then chain 1 to bridge the gap to the next corner. Then we're going to do 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then another 3 double crochets. So that's 3, chain 2, and then do another 3 double crochets in the same chain space. Then we're going to chain 1, and then in that middle chain space, do 3 double crochets. Then chain 1, and then go into the corner and do 3 double crochets. Chain 2, and do another 3 double crochets in that same chain space. So this should start looking pretty familiar to you by now. So in the corners, you double crochet 3, chain 2, then double crochet 3, and on the sides, you chain 1, double crochet 3, and then chain 1. It's pretty easy. So in the side space, we're going to do 3 double crochets, and then chain 1, and then do our corner space. 3 double crochets, chain 2, and then another 3 double crochets. And then chain 1, and do 3 double crochets in the side space. And then chain 1, and just like we did before, we're going to slip stitch under those first 2 chains, and chain 1 to finish off. And then you can cut your yarn. And now we're going to change to our main body color. So just like we did before, we are going to chain 2 to start off the row. And this row is very similar to the previous row. So we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and just like we did before, we're going to double crochet 2, one, 2, and then chain 2, and then do 3 double crochets in the same chain space. Next, we're going to chain 1, and then in the next chain space, do 3 double crochets. Then chain 1, and do 3 double crochets in the next chain space. And this forms the side of our square. Then we're going to chain 1 and move into the corner space with 3 double crochets. Chain 2, and do 3 more double crochets. And the rest of the round is pretty much that exact same pattern, just repeated 3 times. By now you should be pretty familiar with it, so I'm going to leave you to it and I will meet you back here when that round is all done. All right, so I've come to the end of my round, so I'm going to slip stitch and chain 1 to finish off, and then cut my yarn. And that's it. That's our granny square all done. Now you need to make a bunch of these. The number you need to make is going to depend on your size and kind of how tall you are. So for me, I'm a size medium, but I'm also not very tall. So make sure you give yourself a measure and figure out, across your shoulders, how wide you are, because that's going to determine how many squares wide you need to make your front and back. And then measure from the top of your shoulder to the bottom of your hip to figure out how long you need to make it. So for me, I'm 5'4" and I made a cardigan that is 5 squares long. I probably could have also made it 4 squares long and also had it fit pretty well. So just measure yourself and check how tall you are and kind of how long you want your cardigan to be and determine how many squares you need to make. In the written pattern, I'll leave rough estimates of how many squares you're going to need to make based on your size. But again, if you're particularly tall or particularly short, you can modify the number of squares you need based on that. The assembly for this is going to occur in 3 main parts: the back, the front, and the sleeves. So for each portion, the assembly technique is going to be pretty much the same. Just follow along with the diagram to figure out how many squares you need to sew together. And then what I like to do is arrange my squares out on the table so that I can see how it's going to look once it's all assembled and make sure that there's no 2 colors too close together and things like that, and make sure that it has a nice flow. And then once I've determined the layout of my squares, I like to separate them out into rows and then attach them together 1 row at a time until I have a big rectangle. So the assembly for this is pretty simple. We're just going to slip stitch everything together. Select any 2 squares and place them pretty sides together. So sometimes these have a pretty side and an ugly side. If there is a side that you like more than the other, put those facing each other so that the ugly side is facing out. Then we're going to slip stitch these together. Using your main body color yarn, we are going to slip stitch by going through the front loop of the square that's facing you and the back loop of the square that's facing away from you. Not through all loops, just the front loop of the square that's facing you and the back loop of the square that's away from you. Then move into the next stitch and do the same thing. Go through the front loop of the square that's facing you, and the back loop of the square that's facing away from you. And then we're going to slip stitch. By slip stitching through the front and back loop only, that's going to help this all lay flat instead of puckering at the seams. Once you get to the chain space, it's the same story. It's just going to be a little bit more difficult to get your hook through because it is a chain and not a single crochet. So the stitch is a little bit tighter, but go through the front loop of the chain in the square in front of you and the back loop of the chain in the square that's away from you. Just like with the regular single crochet stitches. It is going to be a bit of a pain to try and get your hook through, but that's kind of just how you got to do it. Then once you have those all stitched together, you can cut your yarn and attach the next square. It's going to take you a while, and at the end, you're going to have a million yarn ends to weave in. Just prepare yourself mentally for that. It's going to take a while. So I suggest you find a show you want to binge watch or a nice audiobook or something you want to listen to and get to slip stitching. Each part of this pattern, the sleeves, the back, the front, they're all the exact same technique. So we're not going to go through these all one by one because it's all pretty much the exact same technique. Just make sure that you follow the diagrams in the written pattern to figure out how many squares you need to slip stitch together to get the shapes that you need. Once you have all of your squares slip stitched together, we are ready to assemble the actual cardigan. So we're going to start by seaming together the front and back portions. So the back portion is just one big square, and then the front portion are 2 smaller rectangles. Line up the front portions with the outside of the back portions so that there's a gap in the middle, just like this. Make sure you're lining them up with the ugly sides together because we're going to seam the shoulders closed and this is going to form the inside of the cardigan. So you want to make sure that all your seams are on the inside of the cardigan, not the outside. So make sure that your ugly sides are facing out and your pretty sides are facing in. Then when you have your shoulders lined up, we are going to slip stitch them together using the exact same technique that we used to sew all the squares together. So using your main body color yarn, we are going to slip stitch the front and back portions together to form the shoulders. So once you have your first shoulder done, you can go ahead and repeat this same process and do your other shoulder. Once you're done with the shoulders, we can go ahead and seam the sides together. The sides are going to use the exact same technique as the shoulders, but make sure you leave the top 2 squares on the front and back unseamed to form the armholes. Once you have that all seamed together, you can go ahead and try it on and make sure that the length is what you want. Don't worry if it seems a little narrow in the front. We're going to add a border that's going to help close that up later. If you need to add any squares to the length or take anything away, now is the time to do it. But if everything looks good, then we are ready to attach the arms. To assemble the sleeve, we need to fold it in half and then slip stitch where the 2 sides meet each other to form the seam. Make sure you leave the top and bottom open because one of those is going to go for your shoulder and the other one is where your hand comes out. Once that's done, we can go ahead and crochet the border. So to make the border, go into any chain space and chain 2. Then we're going to do 1 double crochet in every stitch across. So in the first stitch, you double crochet 1. So that's 2. And 3. And then do 1 double crochet in the chain space. And then carry on with 1 double crochet in every stitch until you get to the next chain space. When you get to the chain spaces at the end of the squares, we are actually going to skip those. Don't do any double crochets in the chain 2 spaces where the squares meet. If you do a double crochet there, then the sleeve is going to start belling out and it's going to look really wide and weird. So just skip over the chain 2 spaces. So you double crochet 1 in every stitch, double crochet 1 in every chain 1 space, and then skip the chain 2 spaces. And continue like that until you reach the end of your round. So once you reach the end of your round, you can go ahead and slip stitch to join the rounds together, and then chain 2 to start your next round. We're going to do 1 more round of double crochets. So we're going to double crochet 1 in every stitch all the way around until we reach the end of our round. And once you reach the end of your round, you can go ahead and slip stitch and then chain 1 to finish off. Once you have both of your sleeves done, we are ready to attach them to the body. So with pretty sides together and ugly sides facing out, we are going to line the sleeve up with the armhole. Make sure that the areas where your squares join are lined up, unless you're doing a small, in which case all of the squares aren't going to line up perfectly. Just line it up best you can. Then we are going to attach them together using the exact same technique as before by slip stitching everything together. The procedure for crocheting the border along the bottom and along the front is pretty much exactly the same as for the sleeves. And to make things easier, I just filmed this on a single square instead of trying to do it across the whole thing because the whole project gets pretty bulky at this point. So starting in the first stitch on the bottom, we are going to chain 2 and then do 1 double crochet in every stitch across and 1 double crochet in every chain 1 space, skipping the chain 2 spaces, just like we did with the sleeves. Then when you get to the end, you're going to chain 2 and turn. Then we're going to do 1 double crochet in every stitch across until we reach the end of the row. Once you reach the end of your second row for the bottom border, we're not going to cut off the yarn. We're actually just going to chain 2 and rotate it 90 degrees to start the border on the front. So we're going to do just like we did before and do 1 double crochet in every stitch across, but these first couple stitches are going to be across our bottom row of double crochets. So in each double crochet, you're going to do 2 along the sides. So we're going to do 1 double crochet. And then along the side of that same double crochet, we're going to go in and do a second double crochet along the side of the border we made for the bottom. Then go into the next one and do 1 double crochet. And then do another one along the sides of that same double crochet from before, and that's the border portion done. From here on out, it's going to be exactly the same as we did for the border along the bottom and for the sleeves. You're going to do 1 double crochet in every stitch and every chain 1 space and skip the chain 2 spaces. This one's going to take you a while because it is very long. Then once you reach the end of your row, we're going to chain 2 and turn. But unlike the sleeves and the border on the bottom, we're going to do 9 more rows of double crochets. So you're going to do 1 double crochet in every stitch across, chain 2 and turn 9 times. So you'll have 10 rows of double crochet total when you're done. Once you're done crocheting the border, you may notice that there is a slight gap along the neck where the front and back kind of shoulder meet each other. If you have that gap, you can go ahead and weave your tapestry needle with some of your main body color yarn and just do a few whip stitches to close that up. You might not have this gap. I had a gap, but not everybody will, depending on kind of how tightly you crochet and everything like that. There's a lot of factors that play into whether or not you're going to have a gap there. I had a gap there, so I'm just using my tapestry needle to sew it closed. So if you have a gap, go ahead and close that up, just using a few whip stitches, and that should be fine. And then after that, we're going to start the long, arduous task of weaving in all of the many yarn tails that we have for this project. Okay, now that the actual crocheting part is over, now comes the longest part and kind of the most tedious part, which is weaving in all of your yarn tails. So you're going to take your tapestry needle, thread it with any yarn tail you see, then weave the yarn tails between stitches. You want them between the stitches so that they're not visible. So you go one way, come out on the other side, Then you go back the way you came, and then you go back again. So basically you weave it back and forth 3 times and try and get it through the yarn, if that makes sense. So don't just go through the stitches, but break apart little bits of the yarn so that it has something to hang on to. And once you've weaved it back and forth 3 times, you can cut the end and move on to the next yarn tail. It's going to take a long, long, long time, but you're almost done. It's going to take a while. All right, this is it. We are all done. This is our finished cardigan. It's not exactly the same as the original cardigan. The original cardigan had a lot smaller granny squares, but for the sake of simplicity, I decided to make the squares a little bit bigger because, man, if I had to crochet any more granny squares for this, it would have taken forever. So since it is 110 degrees outside, the primary use of this sweater right now is going to be wrapping myself up while the air conditioner blasts way too cold while I'm big shrimping it, playing Stardew Valley. So anyway, if you like this video, please be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more crochet tutorials. If you are interested in seeing what other crafts I'm doing, you can go ahead and subscribe to my other channel. I'll leave a link down in the description. I do all kinds of different crafts on that channel, not just crochet, so make sure you go and subscribe to that channel if you want to see what else I'm working on. Let me know in the comments below how you did, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!